Hi, I'm Carl, and welcome again to 330, the television show where we give local builders 30 days and $3,000 to showcase their talents. Today is a very special day because today we're at my house and we have a local builder in my backyard that's going to build my children a fort. They have 30 days and $3,000 to dream up any fort that they can imagine. But let's not get ahead of ourselves because today is just the day that they will just be laying the foundation. Hey, let's go check out and see what's going on, shall we? I am so excited to see what's going on in my backyard today. Again, today is just the foundation, but it'll give you an idea of how great and how big this project really can be.
Hey, it's done.
It's done. We are here with Dan the Builder.
Handy Dan Dodson.
Dan the Builder.
Handy Dan.
Handy Dan. Dan, you, even though you had $3,000 in 30 days to build the fort, you actually built the fort in one day.
Well, and listen, like I was telling you, I misunderstood. I thought the 330 stood for 3 hours and $30, you know, but under those circumstances, I think I built a pretty good fort here, you know, and actually had enough left over that I got me some Taco Bell and a Gatorade.
Good for you, Dan. And I see with the time that you had, you went ahead and you built a little fence here, huh?
Well, yeah, I thought you might have some ponies or something.
Ponies? No, Dan, we don't have any ponies. No. Okay, great.
I can fix that. I was thinking about putting a gate there anyway, but hey, how about this fort, right? I mean, with the time allotted and the money, I think I did a pretty good job for your kiddos. I think they're gonna enjoy it. I actually built them a little reading nook right here, you know, in case they want to read their Henry Potter books and whatnot. I can fix that.
Alrighty, Dan.
Handy Dan.
It seems like you got the slide, but you've added something to it.
Yeah, I created these. I call them slide stoppers.
You slide stoppers.
Yeah, well, if you have a hefty kid or two that stops them from, you know,
hitting the fence you made right there.
Yeah, you don't want to break a pinky or something.
That is very medieval, Dan.
Well, that's just general physics.
All right, that's good. Well, it seems sturdy enough. Okay, all right.
I can fix that.
Okay, that's be great. Well, here's something positive. You have built a climbing rock wall.
Yeah.
And those are real rocks there, Dan?
Nothing but the best, Clark.
It's Carl. All right, I'm just gonna climb on up here and test it out up there, all right?
Yep. Permission to board, El Capitan.
Here we go.
I can fix that.
Well, this is a first on 330. Dan the Builder.
Handy Dan.
Handy Dan is basically...
I can fix that.
Dan, please, just come down. This is sand. Dan, can you explain this to me?
Yeah, that's your foundation, boss man.
The foundation is made out of sand!
Well, technically, it's a floating slab on sandy lomas.
That's why it sways, Dan!
No, not that so it can withstand an earthquake.
This thing couldn't withstand an earthquake. This thing couldn't withstand a light rain. It couldn't even withhold my 4th grade son!
Well, he is kind of husky.
You built the fort on sand, Dan! The foundation is everything!
Don't keep pushing that, you're gonna break it!
Ah!
I can fix that.
There you go. Can't go wrong with the skit, guys. Hey, tonight we are finishing up this series that we've been going through all month long, and it's all, hey, Peyton, dial in for me, dial in. We're finishing up this series we've been going through all month long about building our faith. How can we build a faith that is built on a firm foundation? And we've been in Matthew chapter 7. And so 2 weeks ago, we looked at this idea that when a builder goes into an area to start to build something, before they ever lay down the foundation, the first thing they have to do is clear out the things that don't belong. And so we simply ask the question in our own lives, What beliefs do we have about God, about ourselves, about our faith that may not be the beliefs that need to be inside of us? What things do we just need to clear out to get down to the foundation that is Jesus Christ? And we talked the next week about how to figure that out, and that is simply by asking the question, did Jesus really say this? Did Jesus really say that? And we dig into who Jesus was and what he said and the message that he came to proclaim. Pay attention, Luna, pay attention, pay attention. And the message that he came to proclaim to this earth. And if our beliefs don't line up with that message, then maybe it's something we need to adjust in our lives. And so we talked about clearing out beliefs, and then we talked about really dialing in and building on the foundation that is Jesus. Did Jesus really say that? And that was last week. And I know those are really kind of heavy topics. And so if you want to know more about that, or you just weren't here those weeks, or you want to re-listen to those are on our Facebook page, my Facebook page, our student ministry Facebook page, and our church YouTube page. I'd encourage you to go check those out. But there's something I want to say on those topics before we move on to our topic tonight, and it's this. Clearing out beliefs that may not belong in our heads and in our hearts, and asking the question, did Jesus really say that? Those are not one-time events in our lives. Those are things and actions that we need to take consistently throughout the rest of our lives. As I step closer to Jesus, I'm going to understand that I have some more beliefs in here that maybe are a little bit off that I need to clear out. And as I step closer to Jesus, I need to make sure that I'm asking, as people tell me what Jesus said, I need to make sure that I'm continuing to ask, is that something Jesus really said? And I'll say it this week again. I want you guys to walk away from hearing me speak at Worship Uncoiled and say, did Jesus really say that? And really dig in and start to build your own faith on the firm foundation of Jesus' words. And so tonight, as we finish this series, I want to talk about storms. And when we go back to Matthew chapter 7, we've been reading these verses all month long. And maybe there's something in here that you missed. Everybody who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise builder who built a house on bedrock. The rain fell and the floods came and the wind blew and beat against that house. It didn't fall because it was firmly set on bedrock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and doesn't put them into practice will be like a fool who built a house on sand. The rain came, the rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell and was completely destroyed. Now, I'm a person that really loves storms. Anybody else in here, like thunderstorms, you're just a big fan. I'm a big fan of thunderstorms. The worst thunderstorm that I think I've ever experienced in real life is when I was in high school. When I was in high school, there was this storm that blew in the afternoon in early summer, late spring, early summer. And I was sitting in my parents' living room watching this storm roll in through their windows. And I will never forget the sight. I remember watching the wind start to pick up, and there's kind of an excitement, kind of a buzz as the wind starts to whip through the trees. But then it was crazy. The sirens were going off. The wind was starting to whip through the trees. I was sitting there looking out the windows like, this is awesome. This is really cool. And like it's starting to thunder and lightning. And then all of a sudden the sky turned like this weird green color. Maybe you've experienced that. It was just like oddly green. And then the wind picked up so bad that these trees started bending in directions that I thought was completely impossible. And I was like, this is awesome. And my parents are like, you have to get down to the basement. And so they're like pulling me down to the basement. And I'm like hanging onto the rails so that I can keep watching these trees whip around in weird fashions and experience this storm in all of its glory. But they eventually did pull me down to the basement. And when all was said and done, the little wooded area outside my parents' house had something like 11 trees completely destroyed. Some of them were completely uprooted. Some of them were broken in half. They had straight line winds come through that just demolished everything. Storms created by weather can be scary, powerful, and destructive. But the truth is, the storms we experience in our own lives can be even more scary, powerful, and destructive. And we don't like storms in our own lives. We try to avoid the storms in our own lives at all costs. And so our tendency is to try to create this life where we don't experience storms. And I think a lot of times when we think about building our faith, our thought process is that if I build a faith that is strong enough, if I build a faith on the foundation of Jesus, and my faith is right with God, and I pray hard enough, and I do all the things that I'm supposed to do, that I won't experience the storms of this life. And unfortunately, this has been preached from the pulpit more times than I can count. And you guys have heard this preached. You've heard people say you're going through difficult times, you're struggling, you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with mental health issues because you've sinned, because you've done something wrong, because your faith isn't strong enough, because you haven't prayed hard enough. But the truth is, those messages that we have heard preached are hogwash. They're just not true. You see, in Matthew chapter 7, there's something really important that happens over the course of these verses, and that's this. The person that built their foundation on the sand and the person that built their foundation on the rock both experienced the storm. The person that built their foundation on the sand and the person that built their foundation on the rock both experienced the storm. Matthew 7:25 and 7:27 say, the rain fell, the floods came, the wind blew and beat against that house. And this was not a small storm. This was a huge, destructive storm that both of these builders were experiencing. Building our faith on the foundation of Jesus does not promise protection from the storms. We are going to face difficult times in our lives. We are going to face some pretty big storms. But building our faith on the foundation of Jesus gives us strength as we experience the storms in our lives. Building our faith on the foundation of Jesus gives us strength as we experience the storms in our lives. Storms are going to come. So the question is, how do we handle the storms in our lives? How do we do this? And Jesus says it right here in Matthew chapter 7. The first thing we do is we prepare for the storm. We prepare for the storm. And we prepare for the storm by doing exactly what we've talked about the last couple weeks. We hear the words of Jesus and we put them into practice. We hear the words of Jesus and we put them into practice, and we get rid of beliefs that shouldn't be in our heads and in our hearts. And we continue to ask the question, did Jesus really say that? We get down to the nitty-gritty of who Jesus was and how he lived and how we can build our lives based on his message that he brought to this earth. And when we build our lives on that, when the storms come, they're going to be difficult. They're going to be hard. They're going to be tough. We're not going to want to go through them. But we can have strength. And we can have support. Prepare for the storm. Prepare for the storm by building your faith on the firm foundation of Jesus. And again, that's by hearing his words and putting them into practice and continuing to ask the question, did Jesus really say that? And here's the second thing. Don't believe the lie that if you build your faith on Jesus, you're not going to experience storms. That's a lie. If you build your faith on Jesus, you're still going to experience storms. And we can prepare for those storms. And anytime you hear a message that says, if you just fill in the blank with Jesus, then you're not going to experience fill in the blank, immediately a red light should go off in our heads. And we can come right back to Matthew and we can say, well, Jesus said both builders experience storms. And the storms catch us less off guard when we know we're going to have some hard times in this life. So we build on a foundation of Jesus, and we are prepared that sometimes life is going to be hard. We prepare for the storm. And then during the storm, not only do you prepare for the storm, but you have to take action during the storm. You have to stand strong, relying on the foundation that you've already built during that preparation. During the preparation, you have built a foundation on Jesus. And during the storm, you rely on that foundation. And this is really difficult. Because during the storm, you rely on that foundation by being honest and vulnerable with yourself. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I love to pretend that everything is all together in my life. I love to pretend that everything is great. I'm super positive. Everything is awesome. Things are going great. But I've experienced some storms. And if we can be honest and vulnerable with ourselves during a storm, we can feel and experience our emotions. We don't shove them down. We don't push them away. We're honest with the emotions that we feel. We will handle the storm better, because the truth is, those emotions that we feel in the midst of the storm, God gave us those. God gave us those to help us process what we are going through during the storm. And so we're honest and vulnerable with ourselves. And then we are also honest and vulnerable with God. Here's the truth. God can handle whatever you throw at him. Any emotion, any frustration, any anger, any language, whatever it may be, God can handle whatever you throw at him. He just wants to hear your heart. And when we can be honest and vulnerable with ourselves about how we're feeling, and honest and vulnerable with God about how we're feeling in the midst of life's storms, God shows up and he holds us. Even when we come at him with the most anger we've ever felt in our lives, God just wraps us up in his arms. And like that foundation holds the house strong in the midst of a storm, God holds you in the midst of whatever storm you may be facing. We're honest and vulnerable with ourselves. We're honest and vulnerable with God. And we're honest and vulnerable with trusted individuals. Now, I want to be really careful here, because there's a really important word. We are honest and vulnerable with trusted individuals. We're very careful with who we approach and what we say. but we have a small group of people around us. And I hope that you guys have a small group of people around you, whether that's parents, whether that's me, whether that's student ministry leaders, whether that's a really strong, I say this cautiously, strong group of friends that you can be really, really honest with. See, God gave us relationships for a purpose. They can help us walk through difficult times. But being honest and vulnerable is some of the most difficult things that we do in this life. Because we want to pretend that everything is okay. But the truth is, we experience storms. Guys, I'll be honest, I have experienced some devastatingly huge storms in my life. I've gone through times of severe depression. Like stay in bed, need to go see psychiatrists, psychologists, get counseling, depression. I've experienced a miscarriage when Kirsten and I lost a baby. I've experienced mental illness. Some big storms. And I'm sure that you guys sitting in this room, if you're honest, you've experienced some big storms too. And I want you to know that you're not alone. In the midst of the storms of life, you're not alone. And if you are in the midst of a storm right now, I would love to talk to you about it. No judgment. I'm not going to come down on you for anything. I would just love to be someone that would be there helping hold you up in the midst of it. Helping bring you comfort and peace and the love of Jesus in the midst of whatever storm you may face. And so here's the practical challenge tonight. If you are currently not in a storm, life is really good, things are going great, awesome. My encouragement to you would be go ahead and start preparing. Start preparing because at some point we all experience storms. At some point we all experience difficult times in life. And Jesus makes that clear in Matthew chapter 7. Prepare for life's storms. Hear Jesus' words and put them into practice. Continue to ask, is this really what Jesus said? And how can I live my life out in what Jesus really said? And if you're in the midst of a storm, be honest and vulnerable with yourself and with Jesus and with some trusted individuals. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And if I'm someone you trust, I would love to be that person that talks to you, that helps you through that. Because storms are hard and scary and can be pretty devastating in our lives. But you've got support. You're not alone. You are very, very loved. And as a storm comes through, I hope that you will remember that you are not alone. And that you will find the words of Jesus to be true, the foundation of Jesus to be true, that he is wrapping his arms around you, and that you will find someone trustworthy that you can talk to, that will help you take steps forward, no matter what that looks like. Take steps forward as you walk through the storm. Let me pray for you guys. God, thank you so much for tonight. God,